thanks to the MaTPO Association for giving us this opportunity, and thanks to all the panelists. My name is Shweta Doshi, and I'm one of the co-founders at GreyAtom. My role at GreyAtom is to build newer programs and make sure that our learners get the desired outcomes. So, career pivoting programs is what GreyAtom always stands for. And we build industry partnerships in India as well as globally to make sure that our learners transition into right kind of roles. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to quickly introduce the panel here. And I think, Mayuresh, if possible, if you can bring them on the window. So the first one is Siddharth Ramachandran. So Siddharth is a IIT Roorkee IIM Kozhikode grad, and he's a data scientist focused on solving real business problems through data products. He's been associated with GreyAtom and Datagiri ever since our inception, and he's mentored our initial cohorts, has supported us in multiple ways. Today, he is joining us from Germany, and he's the head of data science at GfK Germany. It's a 10,000 plus global giant, and he heads data science across different business verticals. So that's Siddharth Ramachandran. Next up, we have Abhay Mishra, and he is the co-founder of a company called Calm.work. And they are doing some really interesting groundbreaking work in the space of emerging tech hiring. And they're enabling talented tech and data science folks to access global jobs. So they are a job board where candidates can apply to global, remote, and on-premise jobs. Next up, we have Ritvika. Ritvika is a very close friend of GreyAtom, as well as she's a managing director at Shortlist.net. Shortlist works in India and East Africa to help growing enterprises hire based on skills and potential rather than a pedigree. Shortlist platform screens candidates using a chat-based interview and competency-based assessments, and it allows employers to skip like a very time-consuming and bias-prone process of hiring. On this panel from the MaTPO side, we also have Professor Wilson Pinto, who's head of training and placement from St. Francis Institute of Technology, Mumbai, and has been driving great innovation there. We also have with us Professor Sanjay Daigude, sir, who's been a guiding light behind the placement of Walchand Sangli, and he's impacted multiple thousands of careers as well. And we have with us also Sudarshan Sutar, sir, who's a campus TPO for all DY Patil group of institutions, and at any given point in time, he's helping thousands of learners across the institutions as well make the right kind of transitions. So we have like a very stellar kind of a panel with us today. So we're just gonna very quickly start off. I hope Mridvika, Siddharth, Abhay, you all can hear me. And we're just going to start with the first question where, we're all very curious of how remote hiring in general is happening globally. So I would love to hear thoughts from Mridvika and Abhay with this regards.
Hi, thank you everyone. Thank you for having me. And this is a very, very esteemed panel, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. I think even before I share how organizations are thinking about remote hiring, they've bucketed their activities into three broad areas. The first one is employers are looking at identifying roles that might be well suited to be done remotely. So that includes anything and everything from reworking their JDs to redefining the org structures to identifying what are the different steps that are going to be involved in hiring for these certain roles that could be done remotely. So that's step number one. The second bucket is around investing in remote hiring tools. And these remote hiring tools range from assessments for technical fit to culture fit assessments, which would include video, audio, psychometric kind of evaluation processes. And the third bit that the organizations are focusing on is, once we've hired someone remotely, how do we induct them and onboard them in a 100% remote working environment? So a lot of effort is going into figuring out, how do we make them feel welcomed in the remote setup, as well as give them the tools that are going to be of use, as they start doing their work. So organizations are moving into figuring out their systems and processes and across these three different buckets of work.
Well, thanks for some of the words there, Madhvika, and thanks Shweta for having us introduced over here. It's an esteemed panel, and really happy to be a part of this. Some of the things that we at Calmwork have been responsible for, we are essentially making sure that people can effectively work from anywhere, right? So if you want to hire somebody in the remotest parts of the country, if you want to hire somebody, say in like the very, very rural regions in Chhattisgarh, you can do that. And that same person can still continue working for your company, which could have its headquarters in Mumbai or even in Amsterdam. And that's the kind of sea change that we have been trying to build. And we are seeing that the COVID-19 impact has kind of accelerated that. People are sort of coming to terms with the fact that, okay, it's fine. We can make things work even while we might not be meeting on a day-to-day basis. The biggest shift that it brings for the entire fraternity that wants to get hired, right? It becomes all the more important around how you tailor your emotional quotient, right? When you would see somebody working with you, it's much more easier to get a sense of the kind of energies that they're bringing to the table. If you're sitting in the next room, in the same room, you would know that, oh, this guy sitting next to me, he has been at it for like so engrossed, and he's been working on things like really well. But how do you enable the same kind of trust with somebody who is sitting like, say, like a few time zones away, right? And how do you build those kind of things while at the same time you're also delivering stuff that you're supposed to? And that's something that's where, I'm fortunate that we are having this discussion. That is something where a lot of things that training and placement offices of institutes can help these learners imbibe like very fairly early in their journey, right? So a lot of these people, when they start their colleges, they're like 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and if they start getting a sense of how they can collaborate with teams on a remote project while they are in their multiple places, they could be doing their summers, spending their summer vacations back in their hometowns. But how do they collaborate while that is happening? How on the first week of their classes, like on the first semester, how do they understand, how can they what are the best practices and best etiquettes to use a Zoom call, for example? These are things that are becoming extremely important. And some of the instances that we had in the recent past, we helped like really big companies on board interns for them while they were working remotely. And these are like really large marquee companies, and they are trying to figure out how can interns work while they're still sitting away at their home, and it's working out phenomenal for them. But the only thing is that how do you leverage on some of the learnings that some industry people have gathered over the past years while they were trying to implement these kind of things, and how do we expedite that learning and just spread it across everybody so that a lot of our young students come to terms with that? And that's where I think it's going to be tremendously valuable having all of you people around.
Perfect. Thanks, Mridvika and Abhay for that response. So I think two takeaways from this question is, yes, people are hiring. There are multiple ways in which they are hiring. And one thing that's standing out is how do people collaborate and how do you build those skills? So I have some follow-up questions there as well, which we'll come to in the later part of this discussion. But I think the immediate next question, and very, very relevant to this audience that we have today, this, across campuses, will company hire fresh from campus for remote positions? If so, what kinds of companies would this be? And what platforms would they be using for doing this hiring? So again, I think I would like to pose this question both to Abhay and Ritvika, given their extensive background in this space.
Sure. Thanks, Abhay, for that insight. I'd kick us off and then would love for your inputs as well. So the short answer is that, once the initial wave of this chaos and confusion is over, the employers would definitely look at, hiring from campuses. Right now, everyone is just like figuring out how long will this last, and as soon as some clarity starts to emerge, people will consider hiring from campuses. And there are four primary reasons for this. One is it's going to definitely help them save on the operational costs. If they can conduct the end-to-end process of hiring, all the way from doing the pre-placement talks to doing assessments online to making sure that the candidates are available, the short list of candidates are available at the click of a button, then the costs that are involved in actually visiting the campus, the costs that are involved in scheduling, or even sort of the time that gets spent during the campus interviews will essentially get saved. So one of the biggest gains is going to be the decreased operational costs. The second one is around diversified talent pool. So today, organizations sometimes are limited to hire from certain campuses, either because of the kind of students that they're looking for from certain campuses. Sometimes they have logistical constraints of relocating these individuals and the associated costs with that. But with the students being available via either internships or their full-time offers in a remote working setup, they'd also be able to sort of diversify their campus pool that they currently visit. So if today the organizations have about 10 to 15 prioritized campuses that they can visit, they can very well cast a wider net in terms of going to, easily 25 to 50 campuses, because everything moves to a digital sort of hiring setup. And the last thing I would say before I hand it over to Abhay is that the research and studies have shown the increased productivity when people are working remotely. So with the younger generation and with the younger talent pool, the organizations are definitely willing to sort of take that bet and experiment to see how the work from home will play out. So I think considering all these three criteria, the campus hiring will pick up as soon as we are past this little bit of haziness that we are all in.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Mridvika, for that. I see a few questions on the chat where we have people asking us what is remote hiring. I will just summarize it very quickly for everybody. So in this uncertain times, we are seeing two trends definitely pick up. One is work from home across organizations of all sizes, scales, and shape. And with this kind of work from home, it's not a choice anymore. Right now, it's like a mandate. And we've seen organizations being able to innovate also in this time. So, for example, at GreyAtom, we earlier thought when we were getting into this work from home situation, we were like, we are a startup, we need to constantly innovate and we need to constantly challenge the status quo. And how are we going to do all of that when the team is spread across? And we had these kind of doubts as well. But believe me, in the last 15 to 20 days, GreyAtom has been able to come up with 3 completely new product offerings. And the entire team has collaborated well remotely. So that is what remote work is. And remote hiring is like, how do we, let's say now, if the whole situation continues and even beyond this situation, let's say I'm Microsoft, I'm a company that's, global, and I want to hire for a candidate from Ichalkarnaji or from Sangli, I'm not going to be able to go to that place physically and conduct interviews and or call the person to my office and conduct interviews, but I will conduct all of these processes online. And there are going to be various collaboration tools, and there are going to be various new processes that will evolve that will help in the end-to-end successful execution of something like this. So that's what remote work and remote hiring is, and that's how we are going to be, that's a key area on which we will be focusing today in this panel discussion. So yeah, over to you, Abhay.
Sure.
Please share your thoughts.
Yep. So on one of the fronts where we are trying to understand if companies are going to go to campuses, hire people remotely, right? So there's two sets of companies that basically, look at remote hiring extremely differently, right? Like Shweta was mentioning, I mean, if you're a very early stage startup, you want to be co-located, you want to be around, you want to be at a place. You're just three people who are working on things, right? You want to be closer to each other, and at the same time you also want to have that level of competence to believe that okay, there's just one person who's going to own all of the business decisions, there's one person who's going to own all of tech. So each one of these guys has to be substantially competent at whatever craft they're at. Then there are the larger organizations, I mean the Amazons, the Microsofts, the Googles of the world. So what they basically need is that they can set up processes to train people around what are the things that are happening at the company. And like while we are still amidst the chaos of the entire COVID thing settling and still being resurgent at some places, what's happening is that a lot of these larger companies like Amazons and Flipkarts of the world, they are starting to go to the campuses because they know that this is the best time to get to the best talent and the fastest. Not a lot of companies are trying to woo them at this point in time, and they are just keeping their hiring processes exactly as it would be before. The only difference, there is no executive that's going to travel to a college campus. No executive is going to go and do a 40-minute slide presentation that hey, this is why you should join us, because all of these things, you know what, can happen online. I can deliver a presentation to all those 300 students who are eligible for my company at this point in time, and they could be in any part of the country, because you cannot go to a campus because the campuses per the UGC and the MHA orders, they have to be vacated. Children are in the learners and the students are in their houses. So they are already doing that. And a lot of fresher hiring in places where these kind of systems around training are in place, they've already started. And a lot of the agile companies like the Amazons of the world, what they are doing is they know that they are going to need people in the coming year. So they've already started hiring people, and in parallel, they're building processes around how they can onboard people while they're sitting from their homes, while they are supposed to work from their homes. Because not a lot of people are sure around if this entire thing around the impact of coronavirus is going to settle in a couple of months, or is there going to be a second wave that comes back? Are we better geared to perform better in those kind of times? Companies and the HR directors at these kind of companies, they are responsible to answer those questions in a yes. They have to be better prepared, and they are taking all the steps that they can. And in light of that, all the campus hiring is going to happen. The big silver lining here is that all the companies that earlier would rather travel to an IIT, a BITS Pilani, or a top NIT, they would now be interested to also talk to every institute in the world, because they do not have the logistical issue of traveling to that specific campus anymore. So they can just float one first preliminary test. Everybody who clears that, they could be in any part of the country, they could be from any institutions, they would have much more reach to that. And that's the thing around distributed systems that we are reaching at. So the access to any kind of thing which was earlier rooted in like some confines of setup of power, it's now democratized. People can access that. The only thing is, are we skilling them enough that they're able to access these kind of things? Can they come on a Zoom call? Can they just collaborate in this kind of a Zoom call? And I'm glad, I realized that almost 90% of the institutions have moved their like live classroom trainings to online platforms like Zoom calls, and there's trainings happening there, and it's phenomenal. The entrepreneurial zeal that Indians have it's by far the best that I've seen in the world, San Francisco included. We can make things work in the most limited of resources, and that's something which is going to pay us off much better. And companies are going to hire from campus like before. The only silver lining being that even campuses who could not reach out to these kind of companies, they would have their best people getting placed in all of these campuses if they're skilled properly.
Perfect. Thanks, Abhay. Uh, I have the next question for the from the TPO side. So Professor Daigude, I have this question for you. So over the period, how have you seen the aspirant population change over time, and how do you think that you could equip them on this changing scenario of remote hiring, and what are the perspectives from that side? So would love to hear that.
We have already started in Walchand College of Engineering, Sangland. Recently, we had two events, one by Philips and second by CDK Global. But the basic challenge is the online test. Online test basically because students are taking online test from their home. Even also when student will join the campus, when they are in campus, and nobody will bother to visit any college for next at least 8 to 9 months unless and until they are sure about the situation. So this is going to happen. So I think this scenario will remain for next 1 year, and I can't comment after 1 year. But the thing is that the problem that I observe is the online test conduct. Basically, because that particular agency, the screening agency, because the Philips for Philips, the partner was I think My Anatomy, and there were some issue while conducting the online test. So this is the main issue. Definitely, this is a bigger issue that they will solve this issue. Not a big challenge at all. And the second thing is that basically, I think I the Abhay mentioned about it, is that visiting the institute makes sense because you know the culture of the institute, because you know the because I can say n number of things about Balchan College, or Sudarshan can say n number of things about DY Patil Group, but the culture comes when you visit the particular institute. You come to know about the culture, and you come to know when you directly interact with any individual, it makes a lot of sense. But definitely, if there is no option, then we have to choose this particular option, and this is going to be the truth. It is going to happen like this. So definitely there are n number of questions in my mind, as well as right now there are 349 TPOs present here who are listening this particular discussion. Now everybody's in mind. It's how it is going to happen.
Perfect. So, sir, I'll take that one point, summarizing from your discussion, which is online test. How do you smoothen that whole process, and how can that be done more effectively? And we will have both Abhay and Mritvika respond to that. But before that, let's move on also to Pinto, sir, and try and understand what's his perspective on this, and how does he see the aspirant population, the learner population, being able to adapt to something like this.
You have to unmute me.
Yeah, we
Hello.
can hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I am in placement since 2000. Okay, it's almost 20 years that I am in this field. I've been in charge of training and placement at 4 different institutions, right from SNT University, which is a government college, to Don Bosco, to Pillai College, and right now I'm heading training and placement at St. Francis Institute of Technology. If you look at the overall perspective of students joining the engineering stream, you'll find that there is somewhat downgradation of quality because of the increased number of seats. For example, if you look at 2001, 2002, there would have been hardly 50,000 seats across Maharashtra. Now there are 1,50,000 in Maharashtra, and across India there are 16 lakh students getting admission to engineering. So yes, we can talk about remote, not remote, rural, urban divide, but wherever you go, the quality of students is obviously going to be much at a lower level as compared to what you could get in 2001, 2003, and so forth. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two is we cannot look only at COVID as a problem. Okay, along with COVID comes this economic slowdown, and which is not being factored into a discussion what Abhay talked about or Rika talked about. Recession like 2007, 2008 is what I see coming in addition to COVID. So COVID is not the only major factor which is going to affect the placement. The company's top line as well as bottom lines are going to be hit in the next couple of quarters. Already our manufacturing sector was down just even before the COVID came into picture. So it is going to affect the service sector also because tourism is down, your travel is down, your hotel industry is down, and this is going to be remain static or go down for another 2 or 3 quarters, which is obviously going to come down heavily on the amount of money that you're going to raise, okay, right from government to businesses. Everyone is going to get a big hit on the business. So when the revenue goes down, I normally see there is a hit on the campus recruitment. You have seen it in 2007, 2008, which was a problem year. Then again, a bit of it in 2011. So 2020, I don't see the same numbers being picked up as the 2019 year. Definitely not. I think others might have a different opinion. There might be some colleges who might do extremely well, no issues in that. And then to respond to what Abhay was talking about, is yes, democratization of placement might happen. Definitely it will happen, but this democratization will not happen as like your democracy that you're talking about. It is going to have, percolate to a very small number. By and large, companies will still prefer IITs. Companies will still prefer the NITs or IIMs because there is a certain processes, certain culture, certain benchmark of quality that assured. Any company who goes to higher looks at what is my ratio of success. ROI क्या है? अगर ROI is low, then I don't want to waste my energy on that particular institute or that particular region. So you'll find a bulk hiring happening from a certain institute or certain region. That is because the culture of education or quality of education in that particular zone, that particular institute is quite reasonably good. So we are putting your money into the basket where you are going to chances of losing are low. So that's how my take on this particular scenario.
Okay, thank you, sir. So again, like one key takeaway I will have as a question to be posed to the panelists will also be that the revenue is going down overall, right? So there will be an impact to the overall hiring, and we would love to hear the panelists' perspective as well on that. So more on that. Meanwhile, we would also like to go to Sudarshan sir as well and capture his thoughts on the aspirant population. What are they thinking at this point in time, and overall, how do they think that are they equipped, not equipped? Sudarshan sir, your thoughts here.
Very good afternoon. Yes, rightly said. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, in such a situation of COVID-19, we are survivalists. And we have to take care of two things. One is a preparedness, and another one is a resilience. What do you mean by preparedness? As Abhay said, Amazon is ready to for a remote hiring. Yes, recently they had invested huge in HR technology, and in one day they had 1,900 employees on board. According to World Economic Forum, the Netherlands is the next country where they can ready to absorb work from home culture till 14%. According to them, USA will be ready in 2025 as a 38% for a work from home culture. So for a population point of view, remote hiring, it will be the, I can say, the part of recruitment process for campus also, for lateral hiring also. So the next question is that for tier 2 cities like Kolhapur, like Osmanabad, like Nasik, so how the students will tackle with these situations. So I figure out the 5 skill sets for the remote based employees or remote based hiring. The first one is the time management. The student should know the time management skills. So where like for today's meeting, we are prepared with some mental preparation. So the people can use the apps like a Toggle or a health time doctor for time management things. So on timeness, these things. So students should be punctual. The employees should be punctual for the remote hiring best. Then communication. The communication should be strong in verbal and non-verbal also, because the cross culture I can say work culture will be happen in remote hiring or work from home culture. So either I will communicate with the team player from Canada also, or from Bangladesh also. So I should have good communication skills, either written or verbal. So good email writing, Skype interviews, or anything like a Zoom. Then third is a technical knowledge. Nowadays the Coursera.com, GreyAtom, these are the available platforms where students can do many certifications. They can upgrade themselves through remotely. Fourth is the collaboration. So what is collaboration? As I said, the cross-culture environment will be happen in a remote-based, I can hiring or a work-based culture. So we should be ready with the cross-culture environment. We should ready with the foreign language like a Japanese, like a Russians or French. So we have to collaborate. We have to work with a team. And the fifth one is the balance, the work-life balance. The students should be ready with the work-life balance. The employees should be ready with the work-life balance, because the personal life, the corporate life, where you can feel that there is no personal life because the work from home is now is my routine. So overall, this kind of skill sets we have to learn in future. I recently heard that the Indian government is investing 102 lakh CR for the IT infrastructure. Recently, Jio and Facebook deal, all of you know. So these are the things are going on. But as Daigodu said, the face-to-face culture is important while in campus recruitment, where we can understand students' mentality in very well. Although AI is taking lead in that case, but there are some limitations. So we have now two things: whether we consider remote hiring for IT only, or manufacturing it only. So these two things we have to take care in future. So this is my point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Very informative. I think I will stay with the same points, skills. I think you raised some very fantastic and relevant points here, very informative. So I will go to Siddharth, and Siddharth is joining us from Germany. And Siddharth, if you can share your perspective on what are some of the top skills? As Sudarshan sir said, he mentioned a list of skills that will be very effective for someone to work remotely. So in your opinion, what are some of the top skills that you are seeing right now within your teams or in general that are helping in the remote work paradigm?
Okay, sorry. I guess, yeah. Hi, everyone. I think this is a very, very interesting conversation, and really the points made by Mr. Sudarshan, I think that's bang on, really. And of those, I think the most important one that he said was communication. Because normally you would sit beside somebody when you are solving a problem. Now, there is nobody beside you, which means if you have to communicate with that person, it has to be through a chat or through an email. So this has to become very clear to the other person what your problem is. It could be asynchronous. So that means I send an email, you can reply back after 2 hours, or it could be synchronous. I send you a chat and you reply. Both of these styles are very different, and it's very important to know what to use when and how much information to provide. And the second most important thing, again, on the same topic, but not really specifically to communication, is proactiveness. So again, you are not sitting with your boss in the office. You are not sitting with your senior in the office. They don't know what you're doing. Maybe you are stuck and there is nobody to help you. Maybe you're struggling on the wrong direction, right? So you should not do A, you're you should be doing B, but there is nobody to help you because nobody is looking at you. How proactive can you be in communicating this problem, saying, hey, I tried X, Y, Z, but I'm not able to make a headway. Can you please help me? So there should be initiative from the student, from the employee, and raise their hand saying, I'm stuck. Can somebody please help me? I think these are the two most important things. I mean, apart from talent, programming ability, all this is obviously nothing's changed there. So that's the same as it was before. What has really changed is communication and initiative.
Absolutely. And I think communication will take that point slightly further. It's interesting to see how tools like Zoom are also facilitating great communication. There's a small feature within Zoom called Breakout Rooms, and that's something that we are using internally at GreyAtom with our learning, within our learning sessions across our learners as well, is to make sure that people get those small chat rooms for each other, where if they have to collaborate on smaller things, they can just go into those rooms, brainstorm, and then come out of it with some kind of solutions. So it's interesting and will be interesting to see how tools will enable these kind of communication related collaboration as well. Okay, thanks for the insights, both Sudarshan sir and Siddharth. Moving on, I think I parked 2 points from the prior discussion. So one was around the online assessment. So overall, I think first let me ask a larger level question where, how can campuses prepare themselves better to, all the online hiring processes? Right. So campuses have traditionally maximum, 60, 70, 80% of the times have been doing mostly on-prem hiring. So how do campuses prepare themselves better for a remote hiring scenario? And I will go back to Abhay and Mridvika both to ask this question and also specifically address that point on how do you smoothen the process for an online assessment. So, Abhay, do you want to take that first?
Sure, that's fair. I would love to take that, but just in a build-up to answering that, there's very valid points that Professor Sanjay, Professor Wilson, and Professor Sudarshan had raised, and there's a common underlying theme amidst all of those three, and they were talking about how good is the culture at any given institution, and that's something which a company would very easily be able to believe at, right? And that is something where technology is becoming a great leveler, right? And that's where I would want to take this question that Shweta is putting. How can we assess better in terms of preparedness that we can make sure that our people, our children who are going to appear for these interviews, they have like much better preparedness for these kind of interviews? And that is where we need much more of these online tests, online exams. Like there's a bunch of quizzes that happen, right? And at the same time, among everybody, there's that great sense of mistrust that happens, that hey, kids might be able to cheat that, and it's not baseless. I mean, it's coming out of multiple reasons, because we have seen some of those things happen in the past, and as kids, I mean, we have all been through that journey as well. So what happens there is, how do we enable, for example, there are online testing platforms which ask you to allow them to access the camera, and they record the screen all the while that you're attempting a test, so that if there is something that is going haywire, you can immediately take a step on that. I was speaking with one startup works out of Vancouver, and what they're building is, in terms of supplementing this assessment thing that happens, they're going to use computer vision technology to basically understand. So if I'm just looking to the next person, then probably I'm referring to something else. If my eyes are like constantly drifting away from the screen, what they're also enabling is that while you're attempting the test, you have an online rough sheet on the right side of the screen where you can do all the computations and calculations that you need to do. So you do not really have to look away from here. And so long as you're looking here, the odds of you not kind of doing any mischievous activity is like extremely high. And these are some ways in which the startup ecosystem is coming up to making sure that these challenges are addressed. But the underlying point that's beneath all of this is this very strong sense of culture. How do we inculcate this kind of belief that, okay, candidates that are coming out of my college are as good as any candidate that is coming out from an established institute that has been running for 70 years. And how do we beat that? It's primarily going to happen and start happening with the culture. Like Professor Wilson was mentioning that very few people from these far off colleges who were not really being featured until now would be able to take that leap into like the bigger company leagues and getting those kind of jobs. But that's a great start. All those institutions where we believe that okay, they have like really good odds of great career placement, they all started in this way. And this is a point in time where if we leverage this right, and if we build some of those skills in terms of like Siddharth was mentioning, in terms of communication, right? And whenever we are working remote, we stress the point that you've got to over communicate, right? Because I would not be able to understand what's the kind of effort that has gone into it unless you're telling me that, hey, you tried this 7 times and failed. But you cannot come back at the end of the 6th hour and say that, hey, I tried this for 7 times and I failed. I mean, I don't know if it actually happened during all those 6 hours. Why not just discuss it upfront in the 40th minute itself? I would have been able to help you navigate through that faster. So how do we set this kind of a culture now? And this is the kind of culture that companies going forward are extensively going to be looking at. And if we can prepare our students for this, I'm a big fan, and I'm like really happy to know that everybody who has spoken on this call from the TPO side, they've very strongly emphasized the fact that there needs to be strong culture that needs to be built. And how do we go about building that? For example, the first semester, there's a lot of behavioral sciences classes that people go through in their engineering classes, and I'm sure in other streams as well. So how do we incorporate some of these things into those classes? How do we incorporate some of those like really practical training on Zoom sessions? Like Shweta was mentioning about breakout rooms. How do people get to know about that the moment they come to join a class? I mean, because you never know, like maybe like the third lecture might happen from their respective hostel rooms, and that's absolutely fine. Why does somebody have to get up and reach to a place to do the same kind of thing that they can do from any part of the world, right? And that's where the entire economical shift is happening. We are moving away from that extremely intensive manufacturing based kind of work to a lot more creative kind of work. And these people who are going to graduate from each one of your institutes in the coming year, in the next year, in the year after that, they're going to be doing things which none of us have seen until now, in like 15 years from now. So those are things that we need to prepare them better for.
Thanks, Abhay. Thanks for all those insights. Mridvika, quick 45 seconds probably for you as well on what do you think, how can campuses address some of the hiring challenges, and how should they prepare better for a campus hiring scenario?
Yeah, I'll again bucket it into three-part solution. One is challenging our own beliefs. When I say challenging our own beliefs, it's everyone from the training and the placement officers to the professors, everyone who prepares the students to eventually get the job. The remote workforce is a reality. It should have come in a few years. However, because of the coronavirus, it's hit us sooner than we would have liked. So the first thing is to agree that this is a reality and we should prepare for it. The second is, as Abhay talked about, investing in students and helping them develop the skills and the mindsets that is expected by the industry, that will consume them. So things that are related to acquiring the technical know-how of how to manage deliverables across digital channels like Zoom, or keeping themselves motivated when they are working in a solitary fashion. Those are the kind of softer as well as technical trainings that would have to be given at the college level. And the third and the most important one is just investment in technology. Because a lot of screening and assessment and selection process will move to a digital scenario, which means if there are computer labs that exist in colleges that allow certain kind of bandwidth, or there are certain restrictions on firewalls, or some certain web sockets, etc., have to sort of get white labeled, etc. So the investment in technology is also going to be the third critical piece that should be looked at. So overall, I would say that for all the engineering, all the digital, kind of students, this seems to be the next possible wave of how placements could happen. But there was a question that was raised by someone around non-engineering fields, from chemical to manufacturing to mechanical. And so we was just speaking with someone at Tata Steel the other day, and they mentioned that they started remote internships, and they're focusing on process improvement, quality assurance practices. So those college students are also getting jobs. They also are getting offers for internships and full-time placements. The nature of the work for the time being is moving from the actual hands-on training to innovation and process improvement and quality assurance kind of projects.
Perfect. Thanks, Mritika. Just one more follow-up question. So video interviewing is going to become a norm. So any best practices you recommend for people giving video interviews really well?
Sure. One is obviously be at a quieter place so that you are 100% focused in having the conversation as you would have, if you were there in person. The second is again, invest in the bandwidth of the internet that you are using, so that there are less and less disruptions. The third is prepare a little bit more from understanding what the organizational culture and expectations are. Because you're not present in front of the individual, it's harder to pick up on non-verbal cues. Therefore, preparing ahead of time and asking relevant questions about the organization's business, the organization's future growth plans, what are the kind of innovations the organization's sort of going to be investing in, is going to be very, very critical. So the students or the career aspirants need to be investing a whole lot of time in researching about the people that they are investing in, people they are interviewing with, and the organizations that they are planning to go work for.
Perfect. Thanks. I have one last question from my side, and post which we will open up this forum for Q&A. And I see already a lot of questions being asked on chat. So we'll start taking those questions one by one. But I think this one, back to Siddharth. Siddharth, one question for you, since, all your career, you've been in the data science space, right? And the space is definitely growing. Businesses are not going to take decisions without looking at data anymore. And if that's true, what role do you see for freshers in a space like data science? You've mentored people, you've also had people join you as interns, but I would just love to understand what's your perspective on this, and if while we have time at hand, if all of these folks want to take benefit of certain data science program, what's the road ahead for a fresher audience? I would love to understand that.
I think the most important, so like you said, I've worked with a lot of people fresh out of college, a lot of interns, kind of help them mentor. Specifically, what's the way forward is that the strength and the skill sets that somebody brings is going to be the most critical path. So that means that I would not, as a company or as a manager, want to invest as much time and effort to actually train somebody on the job. Yes, some part of training is part of the job, but if I see a candidate who already knows XYZ skill set, maybe he already has a Python program, he already has a GitHub repo, I can be assured that this person is quite technically sound, and then I spend more time and effort in training them on the domain rather than on the technical skill set. So I think this is going to be the change going forward, in that the criteria to hire is going to be a bit higher, because we're looking at a recession-ish kind of economy, and there is going to be much more talent on the market. So, in that sense, freshers are going to be at a kind of a disadvantage, because you will also have people with 1, 2, 3 years of experience. And, that's the pool that they're competing with, rather than just all freshers. So really being super strong in technical skill sets, being proactive, and, showing that initiative, I think helps them stand out. I would say. Longer term perspective on data science itself, I don't think it's going to go away. We are moving towards increasing automation. So there was some discussion points around the chemical industry, civil engineering, what happens in these kind of fields, increasingly more and more automation. So something that a human can do will probably be done by a robot. And I'm not saying this is going to happen in the next 1 year, but increasingly, that's the direction in which we were already moving and probably enhances further now. This may not, I may not call this data science work, but it's essentially automation. And automation is definitely technology driven, software driven, and so on. So there is going to be much more emphasis on this. And that again makes us move towards the knowledge economy. So that means that your chemical engineering skills or your civil engineering skills they don't become not useful. They are still as relevant as before. It's just that you would do this through different means. You would rather do this in a CAD software rather than drawing it by hand, right? We saw that kind of a shift. So I think that's kind of the direction we're moving in.
Perfect. Thanks, Siddharth, for all these inputs. So, Sudarshan sir, I would like to hand over to you for the next steps on moderating the questions that we have here.
Yes, so many questions in chat box. So I will. There is a question from Professor Sohail Sayyed, TPO of Anna Saheb Dange, ADCT from Sangli. The question is to Shweta or Abhay will take. Hiring of job seekers shall still be based on new projects tuning up. Will disturb global economy impact on this? Want some views from both of you.
Shweta, you want to go first, please?
You can go first.
Okay. So basically, see, in terms of the global hiring and all of this recession coming in, right? I think everybody has that answer, right? It is going to take a hit. Newer job creation is going to be much more limited. But at the same time, we are not in a 2008 era anymore, right? So all the things that we had to go through in 2008, we are not going to go through it at this time. Why? Because the creative economy is already around. People do not realize this. I mean, in just this patch, there's going to be a lot of new YouTubers that are going to be created. There's going to be a lot of more video consumption that's going to happen. And there's going to be a lot of these kind of things that will start happening. And people would find ways to use their creative and skill-based energies. But at the same time, when you look at like core hard skills, right? Civil engineering skills, and how do you utilize those kind of things while you're sitting and working remotely, or in these kind of situations, how are you going to be more helpful or productive in those kind of things? Some of the things that people are absolutely going to do in these times is upskill themselves on whatever they were not able to invest their times earlier in. And what would be required as an utmost important thing is equanimity in terms of understanding that, yes, this too shall pass, right? And once that wave gets going, once you're on the other side, how better equipped are you? Are you somebody who has picked up skills which are going to be super relevant in times to come? If the answer to that is yes, then your next 20 years are going to be much better off compared to the next year. So are we investing enough towards building those 20 years, or are we just going to be gloomy about this year that's at hand? That's a call that each one of us has to personally make. And hiring would be slow, but if we keep invested ourselves enough, then the times would be much better and they'll pay off much better.
I will just have one, very quick 45-second answer to this question. So, yes, definitely for the next few months and probably 6 months, we will see that there are going to be, the economy is going to be disturbed and there are going to be fewer jobs. But I think in everything that we mentioned, right, number one skill that everybody who is seeking for a long-lasting career needs to have in themselves is learnability. I think I can't emphasize that enough. Like, earlier we were in our careers where, we studied and then we worked and then we retired, that was like the overall graph of an individual. But the times that we are living in, it's so iterative. That process has got to be so iterative that you learn, you work, you learn, you work, and that's a cycle. So even though, so let's say, for example, a new boom is going to happen in edtech. Honestly, education technology. Yesterday, I was listening to this panel by Salman Khan, who's the founder of Khan Academy, Baiju Ravindran, and we had like two people from Harvard, someone from Oxford, and everybody was talking about edtech to be the next revolution. Who knows that that's going to be the creator of newer jobs, right? We didn't know that these kind of jobs existed earlier, but there would be newer kind of jobs, and across streams there could be newer kind of jobs. But the candidates need to have that one important skill, which is learnability. And if they are able to learn anything new very fast, I think that's it. They're like sorted for their career for 20 years, 25 years, and they'll be all good to go.
That's great. I would love to add just one more point over there. So when you're talking about learnability, right, and more things in the education space coming up, and when I say YouTube videos, it's not just going to be that, I call it stupid TikTok videos. It's not just going to be that. It is going to be a lot of people teaching about your structural engineering 101. And students are going to relate to that much better. A lot of professors would be putting up their content online because you're taking the classes online anyway. Why not allow students to access it when they need it the most, like a week before the exam? So all of that shift is going to happen, and we are going to see a lot of that, and it's not going to be like 2008 at all.
Yeah,
very true. The learning is a continuous cycle. The next question is from Sandeep University, based in Nasik. The TPO of university is Indrajit Sonone. He is asking that a very important question he had asked. What will be the role of TPO in remote placement process? Daigude sir or Wilson sir? Anyone can take this question.
I think I have a very bold view as far as this issue is concerned. Because this kind of recruitment is happening, online recruitment is like Facebook Shadi. Because unless and until you meet that person individually and spend some time with that particular person, it becomes very difficult to gauge. But definitely we don't have option, and this online interview, online assessment is one way to select the candidate. But as far as this aspect, or as far as what will be the effect on placement scenario post-COVID. So yes, it will impact a lot, because my experience, the last 15 years I'm working in this area, and I'm coordinating with so many companies right now, and looking at their response, yes, I can say yes. And but definitely we should prepare for this, because when there is no chance, when there is one window is closed, definitely we should try for open other. So I think this will open up other opportunity for students, like competitive examination, like the IES examination, where actually, as far as Maharashtra's participation is concerned, it was earlier it was nil. I think definitely student will find some way. Over to Wilson sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes sir.
Yeah, I have a different take on this. The role of TPOs will remain the same, that of a coach, where you prepare the students for the industry. That will start from the first year itself. As of now, most of the TPOs, most of the colleges were focusing their energy and time on the final year students or pre-final year students. That was the max that they could do because of the bandwidth that they had. Most of the engineering colleges have one person in the TPO department, or maximum two people. Now this has to be broadened a little bit to engage more people from the department and start the training and placement activities, preparing the student for the industry right from the first year. So what ma'am talked about learnability, self-directed learning is going to be the key for a person to survive in the volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, or the complex environment, which is called VUCA or something like that. Everything is uncertain. The skills that I learned today are not useful in another couple of years. So that being the case, the students are asking us many a times, if you can remember, कि सर ये CAD CAM क्यों सीखा, engineering mechanics क्यों सीखा, why do you learn engineering mechanics, why do you learn chemistry? But when you come in the final year after 4 years, you learn that, oh, that chemistry concept that I learned 10 years back are very much useful to my project today. So if they can focus on learnability and focus on self-directed learning rather than learning through the teacher, today what is happening is that a teacher is responsible for even the result of a student. That is absolutely ridiculous. That why should a teacher be answerable or to a student failing? When I teach a class, I teach for 70 students. A student gets 100 out of 100, another gets 0 out of 100. So it is the perception or it is the engagement that student has with the teacher and the subject. Now this concept has to be drilled down to the students as well as the parents who put their words into the engineering, assuming that they're going to get a job. They're not going to get a job on their own. ऐसे ही बैठ के जॉब नहीं मिलेगा. 4 साल का पीरियड कॉलेज में बिताने के बाद you have spent 4 years of time and you have spent 4.5 lakhs or 6 lakhs of money, and that's not the reason why you should get a job. You are going to get skilled. And I'll take a couple of examples. When I was in SNGT, we started training on technical skills way back in 99-2000. Technical skill training, which was not the norm at that time. Now we are starting about we tried this one Tech Geek portal where programming could be skilled, as a normal procedure. It has not worked out much, but now we have engaged with Coursera, and I see out of 2,200, 1,200 students are learning something on Coursera. So this is kind of maybe the mode of learning, mode of teaching is going to change, and probably the PPO is going to be more productive than what he was earlier. He's not going to become redundant. He's going to be even more important.
Sudarshan, may I add a few points here? So, all of y'all have decades of experience in placing people. In my limited experience of last, 3 years at GreyAtom, my role has been very similar to yours as well, where ensuring that our learners pivoted their careers was a key part of my job. And GreyAtom being a venture-backed company, we just don't get evaluated on how many learners joined us, but we get evaluated by our board and by outside for our valuations as well on how many learners we were able to transform. So 2 cents from my side is number one thing that we are always trying to look at is, from your perspective, let's say, a learner is scoring 60% or 70% in their final semester, and a lot of companies, let's say, giving weight to that. I think times now are going to change drastically, and people will do more skill-based hiring going forward. So how much does a person know on the job, and demonstrable skills will be something that's going to be taking even more importance than it is so far. So beyond the certificate, I think companies that we have been interacting with, they are looking for skills and a reflection of that skill. So for example, for tech skills and for software skills, GitHub is a great way where people can show their portfolio that this is what they have done and this is what they have built. And there are companies willing to look beyond the pedigree, beyond the actual marks that a person has scored. Is he able to do something? Because marks was at a point in time, he did well in a particular example, great, but on a continuous basis, what are they able to do? So as people who enable the career transitions, if we are able to constantly push our learners to make sure that they are building skills over a period of time, that's something that's going to definitely stand out.
Yes, very true. Very concrete answer given by the Shweta. I can rather say the engineers or any employee should be solution based. So if there is a problem, do you have a solution? So there is no branch specific hiring, there is no skill based hiring in future. If you are provider of solution, then you are welcome in industry. So I insist students to be ready with the solutions. Marks doesn't matter nowadays. Everyone is having eligible criteria 60%, 70%. But when it comes with the problem, the students must ready to give solution. The industry will only ask, "Bhai, tere ko ye aata hai ya nahi aata hai?" So this kind of strategy we have to follow. One more question from Viraj Barge, the TP of Zil Education Society, Pune. He asking, how to prepare our students for virtual hiring process in future. So Abhay or Siddharth, anyone can take.
Sure. So for virtual hiring, I think I'll go back to some of the stuff that TPOs can actually do, and I think that in the change situation, right, it's going to be super important the role that TPO had been playing until now. So because until now, it would a lot of the things that TPO would do would actively kick in on only in the penultimate year when the student is into their third year or stuff like that. Now what's going to happen is that companies are going to say that, hey, can you show me your Git repositories? What have you contributed on the open source in the past 4 years? Have you been working on things or not? And then it just creates a level playing field for everybody. Somebody from an IIT, if he has done like 60 commits over a phase of 6 months versus somebody who has done like 120 commits given of same size over that kind of a same time frame, you would much rather want the latter, not the former, just because of the pedigree. So the role of TPO becomes extremely important in terms of helping them understand that the world is changing much faster than it ever had. I mean, our parents used to do like the same job for like 40 years and then retire. It's no more the same case in industry. Everybody's switching jobs. In fact, even the kind of things that we do, it transforms like really fast. And as a responsible TPO, something that we can imbibe into our learners is the fact that if they can learn things like really fast, because all the things that you're gonna be evaluated on is basically going to be, can you adapt faster to like uncertain situations like the one that we are going through right now. It's a tremendously unprecedented thing that has happened in the history. The ones that would adapt to it faster are going to step out much better and stronger on the other side. And similarly, in terms of the tests and online hiring that's going to happen, if somebody shows the EQ, a very, very high EQ, emotional quotient, in terms of the fact that they can communicate well, they can understand well, it's going to work out much better. So a lot of soft skills training, which would be centered around communication and how they receive things that they hear from the team in whatever ways it comes. That's some place where you can absolutely help your learners become stronger and better prepared for the future.
Ridvika?
Yeah, just to add to what Abhay said, that I think there will be a requirement to also forge partnerships beyond just the corporates. So corporates and companies will definitely come, to recruit from your colleges, but the kind of partnerships with training companies or even technology tool companies is something that TPOs may need to sort of start investigating or delving a little bit deeper into. So for example, if your college has a batch passing out with a lot of computer engineers, then a partnership with GreyAtom to understand like what is required by the industry today, so that our students can get trained even before they are out there seeking for jobs. Or for softer skills, what kind of reflection and communication trainings are required. So those kind of partnerships also can be facilitated by the TPOs.
Sudarshan, I want to one point. I think everybody, and including you, and everybody just talking about communication and all that. But one thing that all TPO should emphasize, and even also I think, and I sincerely feel that the basics, that is mathematics, physics, and analytical skill play a very important role. Because if I am a very good communicator but I have nothing to say, or as far as these product companies are concerned, the practicing the coding, practicing that kind of club culture, as Valchand has, because proudly I can mention last year I placed more than 23 students, more than having 37 lakhs and above package. Why this happened? It happened because we have a very fantastic club culture where the students are coming together on their own and practicing. So I think just communication on the over the time definitely can be improved. But I still strongly believe that all colleges, all TPOs should emphasize more on their technical skill, their domain skill, their analytical skill, their competency, particularly in mathematics, applied mathematics and physics.
Very true. The engineer must know the mathematics in very well. The next question from Dr. Satish Lakde, the TP of Walchan Institute of Technology from Solapur, for all of you. How will remote hiring affect on mechanical or civil engineering students? It will any consequences from remote hiring for these branches?
Yes, it is bound to happen as far as the mechanical industry is concerned. Already they are not doing well, and all the TPOs they have observed down in mechanical placement, and this is only because of the huge strength number of students admitted in Sinhagad campus. There are 3,000 students typically mechanical, only mechanical, and that's why there are lakhs of mechanical students without any domain knowledge, only marks, and that's why. And to be frank and to be blunt, hardly 10% of them are employable. All 90% are just they are having marks on their cards, but they are really very poor in as far as the skill set is concerned. So definitely, as far as this aspect is concerned, mechanical hiring, it is going to impact badly. And
Thank you
to
very much.
improve,
Now TPOs are very eager to know 11 tools for every placement officer. So thank you everyone. I am handovering this session to Shweta for further session. Thank you very much.
You're unmuted.
Shweta, you muted.
Well, thank you so much, Sudarshan sir. I think we'll just quickly get started. And if you can
Thanks
just
to all the panelists, Sudarshan sir, Daigude sir, Wilson sir, Mridvika, Siddharth, Abhay. Thanks guys for joining this on a Sunday afternoon and making it so interesting. Thanks.